Well, hello, good evening, good afternoon, good night, good morning, wherever you are. I welcome you to the 30. Tonight is a very special night because we are going to be talking about leadership. I know you basically we haven't expanded upon this in a while. So tonight we are going to be starting something very, very special. And we're going to be doing this each and every month, at least one Thursday, one episode a month. We're going to be doing this, and it's going to be called for tonight and going forward again. One Thursday, meaning one episode of the month, we're going to be talking exclusively about leadership. And I'm going to lead that. I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to give you some ideas and some tips, and I'm going to be discussing it from my experience, both as a leader as well as someone who trains, coaches, and develops leaders all across the country and all across the world over the past, I would say, 12 to 15 years in doing that. So we're going to be talking exclusively, and I hope that you will join us, join in the discussion. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comments field so that we can have an extensive discussion about leadership. Let's get this. Again, welcome to the 30. If this is your very first time watching the 30, my name is Patrick Jackman. I am the host of the 30. We started this back in 2020. We continue to bring it to you where we focus primarily on leaders, leadership development. We bring in entrepreneurs, small business owners, and we talk about personal and professional development. So welcome once again. Make sure that you go ahead and like and share this broadcast. We are streaming it live across 3 different platforms. We're streaming live to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. And we do this each and every Thursday, a weekly program, which is the 30. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We are going to be talking about leadership, specifically leaders. Those of you that don't know me, you probably see me come on here and I interview some exciting guests each Thursday. And just to give you a background of myself, I am the founder and lead consultant and coach of the Jackman Group LLC. And we are located in Rochester, New York, actually outside of Rochester, but where we train, coach, develop leaders. We also help teams go from one step to the next in terms of taking them to the next level. And we do business coaching. And we also specialize in organizational strategic planning for various organizations, small and large. So when it comes to leadership, I have some experience, as I said, in leading teams, as well as training, developing, and coaching leaders across this country, across the world, and whether small or large. And I've also, as I said, I've also had the experience of making some mistakes. Someone said you learn from your mistakes. I know there was a quote that was given recently where it was said that you learn from your successes. So whether it is learning from your mistakes or learning from your successes, we're going to talk about it tonight. We're going to talk about it next month, and we're going to do this once every month, one episode from now till the end of 2021. So I'm going to start with some tips, and I hope that you are with me. And my hope is that you have some comments or questions for me so that we make this discussion an interactive discussion as opposed to a one-way discussion. Everyone wants to be a leader. Everyone wants to be an effective leader. In all my years of leading and training and coaching leaders, I haven't come across one leader that said, Patrick, I want to be a horrible leader, or I don't want to develop myself as a leader. Most leaders, most leaders, if not all, would like to take their leadership skills and abilities from where they are to the next level. That's my experience. So we're going to dig deep into leadership. And the first thing is understanding what leadership is and what leaders do. So as a leader, there's a big difference between leading and managing. So as leaders focus more on the vision of a of a team, an organization, a company, where managers more focus on the day-to-day activity. So that's number one. So we're going to be talking about what do leaders do? What does it take to become a more effective leader? The big difference, as I said, is leaders create vision. There's some great books out there on leadership. I posted something on LinkedIn over the past a couple of weeks. The first one that I posted on LinkedIn was, what is your favorite or most impactful leadership book? What leadership book has helped you to take you from where you were or where you are to where you desire to be? That's the first thing and I posted that last week and has some good comments on that. This week I posted, what is your favorite quote? What is your favorite affirmation? Your favorite leadership quote? So you can go to LinkedIn and comment on that. But let's talk about some of the tips of taking you from where you are, whether you are a new leader or a more experienced leader. There are some things that when you look at effective leadership, there are some things that most leaders that are great and effective have in common. And the first one, as we go through this, the first one, and I hope that you're taking notes on these things, and I hope that you give me comments and questions. That's the key. So the first one is to understand that leadership is a privilege and not a right. I said that again. Leadership is a privilege and not a right. There is a big difference when we talk about privilege and right. See, what happens is that there are some leaders that think that they have the right to be called leaders. Well, that's absolutely wrong, because none of us have the right to be called a leader. It's a privilege to be called one. So what is the difference between a right and a privilege? So a right, when you talk about leadership as a right is something that cannot be legally denied, such as rights of freedom of speech, press, religion, raising a family. Those are more rights. When it comes to privilege, now privilege is something that can be given and taken away, and is considered to be a special advantage or opportunity that's available, right? So that's number one. That's the biggest one, is that some people think that as a leader, you have a right to be called a leader. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. It's a privilege to be called a leader. So when we talk about that, I remember when I first started in my leadership venture or journey, I was so excited that I had been promoted or elevated to the point of leadership. But I made so many mistakes along the way. I look back now and I says, wow, you actually did that? And I'm sure that some of you can look back in your earlier years of leadership and says, I can't believe that I did what I did. But the hope is that as we take this journey together, that we will uncover some of the myths and some of the mistakes that we've made, and that you will take some of the tips that I will give, and I'm also going to bring others into the conversation as we move forward. And we're going to talk exclusively about leadership. So, the tip number one for you is leadership is not a right, it's a privilege. And I hope that if you thought it was a right, that you're not getting it twisted, because nothing is owed to us, right? Nothing is owed to us. As a privilege, leadership can be given and it can be taken away. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is that development is the key when it comes to leadership. So development. So when I say about development, so leaders should always look to develop and enhance their leadership skills. None of us have arrived. None of us are to the point where we should be as leaders. We should always be searching and seeking to become more effective. Now, I train and develop and coach leaders all over, as I said. I've touched a number of leaders, and I've learned from some great leaders. And I'll talk about that. One of the things that I learned from a great leader, from a former bishop, is the area of delegation. I didn't know how to delegate. I thought that I could do it all by myself. I thought that I could outwork everyone, right? And I can take it on and I can do it all by myself. In essence, I had to learn. He had to develop me and teach me that leadership, one of the aspects of effective leadership, is in the area of delegation. So development and enhancing your leadership skills is critical when it comes to going from where you are to where you should be or where you desire to be. I know I've met some leaders says, well, they have said it or they've implied that they know it all. We don't know it all, folks. We don't know it all. In essence, we know very little when it comes to leadership. So how can we learn more about how to become an effective leader? And as leaders, we make mistakes all the time. And we have to own it as leaders. We have to own when we make a mistake. But we also have to take the next step and move on to becoming more effective in our leadership skills. And that's in the area of development, training, having a coach, right? So attending training courses, whether online or in person, continuously reading and retooling and enhancing our leadership skills and our leadership abilities. So that's number two, going forward and enhancing and developing our leadership skills. We all have some things, some strengths, that areas where we're strong in, but we also have areas where we're weak in, where we need help. There's some areas of opportunity. So we need to identify what those areas are. And one great way of doing that is really asking someone that's close to you, or individuals that are close to you, the areas of opportunity in your leadership abilities or your leadership skills. And once you've identified those, the next step is to really develop those skills, whether they are soft skills or whether they are more technical skills, right? So if we are deficient in using technology, that's one skill that we need to develop. Whether it's in the area of soft skills in terms of becoming more relational, having relationships in terms of with our team members, knowing who they are, understanding who they are. There's a great quote that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So that's an area. If that's an area of deficiency for you in knowing and communicating with your team members, communication, you need to enhance that. Because how can you be an effective leader if you don't know how to communicate? So the area of communication is key, but you learn that through development, enhancing your leadership skills. So that is number 2. Number 3, and I'm going to talk about number 3 shortly because it's another critical piece. But what I want to do, hold tight. We're going to take this 30-second break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about number 3, tip number 3 for today's session: becoming a more effective leader, learning more about leadership, taking you from where you are and elevating you and taking you to where you should be and where you want to be. Stay tuned. We'll be back in 30 seconds. I'm telling you, that gets better every time. That is a brief preview of what we do here at the Jackman Group. The 30 is brought to you by the Jackman Group LLC, and we focus on leadership development training. We also focus on team enhancement, coaching, and organizational strategic planning. So that was a brief preview of what we do, and also some of the pictures of those that we have trained and developed most recently. So let's look at tip number 3. And again, if you have any questions whatsoever, jump in. If you have any comments, jump in. I'd like to hear from you as we move forward in talking about leadership and giving you the various tips as to how to become a more effective leadership. So put your questions and comments in the comments box. Also like and share the broadcast. So leadership, our monthly tips. So let's look at tip number 3 for today. Tip number 3 is serve your team hard. Serve your team hard. Now, what does that mean? See, sometimes we think that leadership is all about us. When we become leaders, we think it's all about us, right? Me, 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 me. We've created a society where the focus is all about me, 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 and what can I get? Well, as a leader, it's not about you. It's about serving your people. And I'm talking about serving them hard, giving them everything that you can. So the key role, see, people ask me all the time, well, what about leadership? How can I become more effective? How do you define the roles of a leader? See, as a leader, there are many roles, whether it is for profit, not for profit. There are many roles that leaders play, small companies, large companies. As a leader, you are a babysitter, one, and I know some of you can say is amen, right? You are also a referee. You are also a mediator. So those are just a few things that you play as a leader. So what is the key or the most important part of a leader? Well, here it is. The most important part, and I'm going to share this with you, and this is probably worth the admission that you pay to come in. Oh, you didn't pay anything. But here it is. The key role, the most important role of a leader is for you to develop your people for greater results. That's what great leaders do. That's what effective leaders do, is to develop, serve their people for greater results, taking them from where they are to where they should be. And that's serving them the best that you can. Serve them over and over and over again. Serve them hard. That's the number 3 tip. Don't give up on them. Develop them. Find out what their goals are, short-term, long-term goals. Find out more about them and develop them for greater results. What you're doing, in essence, is building legacy. Think about if you are into sports. Think about coaches as a sport. Think about, well, football, NFL football is coming up. The Premier League in terms of soccer and English football has started. But think about the managers, the great managers and coaches that we have. Think about the great leaders that you've had in your lives. Their single most important job, the great ones, is to go on and develop you for greater results because they realize it's not about them. It's helping you to get to where you want to go. That is tip number 3, and probably the most important of the 3 tips that we are discussing now, is to serve your team hard, find out what their goals are, short-term, long-term goals, and help them get there. Because guess what? When you help them succeed, by default, you'll succeed. But it's all about helping them to get to where they want to go. So how do you find that out, guys? You really find it out by asking them and find out where they want to go. What are some of their goals? Again, it comes back to communication. Maybe that's a tip. Actually, that is a tip. I was going to talk about that next month, but I could as well bring it up now, right? Another tip is communication. Learning how to communicate with others, but serving your people. Service comes first. Everything else comes after. So that is tip number 3. That's tip number 3, is serving your people and serving them hard. Let's do this again. Let's take a 30-second break, and we're going to come back and finish up. You're watching The 30. Once again, this is your host, Patrick Jackman. The 30 is brought to you. It's a production of the Jackman Group LLC. Our primary focuses are leadership development, team enhancement, building teams, coaching, and organizational strategic planning. If you have a need for those, certainly reach out to us. Give me a call or join our community, and we can help you in terms of your goals. If you have any questions, you can jot them into the comments, or if you simply want to connect with us, you can join our community, jackmangroupllc.com. That's jackmangroupllc.com. You can go out, check our Facebook page out, our website, join our community as we continue to enhance and enrich leaders and teams. Next week, we are going to have another great and wonderful guest. We keep bringing it to you. I'm telling you, it gets better each time. Tonight, I wanted to take time out to really talk and discuss the word leadership, the role of leaders. And we're going to do this one episode each month where I give specific tips on leadership from my experience, both in leading as well as training, coaching, and developing leaders of all backgrounds, whether you are new or experienced. I'll tell you about the good, the bad, and the ugly. Leadership is very special. It's extremely rewarding, especially when you serve others and you help them to accomplish their goals and take them from where they are to where you desire to be. So our 3 tips as we wrap up this broadcast, this episode, is one, leadership is a privilege. It's not a right. You have a privilege to be called a leader. You don't have a right to be called a leader. Secondly, is as a leader, you want to develop and enhance your leadership skills. None of us, well, some think that I know it all. I was one of those. I started off thinking I knew it all. I had it all down packed. I knew everything about leadership. I knew nothing about leadership when I first started. And through development, I'm continuously learning, associating myself with effective leaders, reading more. I have a coach, I have a mentor, and I've learned so much from those that have been successful. So, developing and enhancing your leadership skills is number two. And the last one that we covered, the last tip for today, is serve your team hard. It's not about you, it's about others, enriching their lives, helping them to become more effective in their skill set. And then by default, you will get whatever you desire to. Well, that's about it. I want to thank you once again. This is the 30. Thank you for joining me on this episode. We will see you next week where we will talk about, well, we'll have another entrepreneur and a leader. We'll talk about event planning, virtual events, and in-person events. May God bless you. Be safe. God bless your family. Peace. I'll see you next week. Bye for now.